to anyone. Woo! I recommend walking around digging your living room. Swallow your tongue, what a jagged little pill. It feels so good, sweet in your stomach. Wait until I say you live, you learn, you love, you learn, you cry, you learn, you lose, you learn, you bleed, you learn, you scream, you learn. I recommend my mouth whatever you do to anyone. I certainly do. I recommend sticking your foot in your mouth anytime. Feel free to hold it down because you wash it right away. Hold it up to the rain. You wait and you see where the smoke clears you out. You learn, you love, you learn, you cry, you learn, you lose, you learn, you bleed, you learn, you scream, you learn. Dixie!
You who are on the road must have a code that you can live by, and so become yourself, because the past is just a goodbye. Teach your children well, their father's help did slowly go by, and feed them on your dreams, the one they fix, the one you'll know by. Don't you ever ask them why, if they told you you would cry, so just look at them and sigh. And you of tender years can't know the fears that seek the truth before they can lie. Teach your parents well, the children's hell will slowly go by, and feed them on your dreams, the one they fix, the one you'll know by. Don't you ever ask them why, if they told you you would cry, so just look at them and sigh, and know they love you. Thank y'all very much for listening to our country teaching today. I'm going to turn it over to the host of the day, Matthew.
All right, Big Matthew, big Matthew.
Use my mic.
This one's fine. Good morning. Good morning. I am Matthew Bond, and I have, what did I say? I have the great honor, that's what I wrote, I have the great honor of hosting Sunday Assembly this morning. And I have very old eyes. There we are. Today's theme, as Steve mentioned, is learning. In my day job, I'm a tutor. And there's one boy I've worked with for a few years. When he was homeschooled, I was the guy who came in and worked on English, reading stories, writing, grammar. Now he's in a public high school, and we're working on the ACT. Since we've worked together so long, he and I have become Facebook friends. We've been working together for years. And Tim will occasionally send me links, mostly to stupid, funny videos or other humorous stuff he finds online. Since he's 17 and I'm 56, our online experiences barely touch each other. His is mostly the world of gaming and stupid videos. Mine is more about how do you find an expensive hotel and where can I print out coupons for Metamucil. Anyway, last week, he asked me if I had looked at what he'd recently sent me, and I said, no, not yet, I'm sorry. And I wrote in my date book, look at Tim's links. And I started to laugh because I realized that 20 years ago, that sentence would have made no sense. Does Tim make sausage? No, he's my student. Oh, you're teaching him how to weld? Do you need to inspect his chains? Anyway, it made me realize how quickly the world changes, and how looking at Tim's links can now be done with the tap of a finger while sitting in a comfortable chair, instead of, say, pacing around his new golf course. And one of the changes in this world is ours, Sunday Assembly. A few years ago, Sunday Assembly didn't exist. And now we have a thriving one here. It will be 2 years old in November, and I hope that are we planning for a party? And there are almost 70 of them around the world. There may be 70. They never update their website. There was 68 last night, but it could be 70 this morning. Almost 70 of them around the world, making changes in cities large and small. All right. For anyone here who does not know what Sunday Assembly is, Sunday Assembly is a secular congregation that celebrates life. We have no doctrine. We have no deities. We are radically inclusive, and everyone is welcome. Our mission in Sunday Assembly is to have a Sunday Assembly in every town, city, and village that wants one. But as I like to say, who wouldn't want one? Look at how cute we are. And our vision is to help everyone live life as fully as possible. We at Sunday Assembly know that we come from nothing and we go to nothing. We have this one life, and together we can help one another make it as good as it can be. Yeah. And this philosophy and non-theology can be summed up in one simple motto: live better, help often, and wonder more. With all the great music, beautiful poems, and interesting talk that we will hear today, please keep those 6 little words in mind. We will try to live better, we will try to help often, and we will wonder more. Okay, there's my intro. Now we got to do some housekeeping things. For our records, I would love to know, and David would love to know, who was here for the first time? Could all those who are here for the first time stand up for just a moment? Thank you all. And thank all those who've come for the 2nd or 3rd time, too. So, a couple other things. In case anyone doesn't know, we offer childcare next door in Lasky Hall. And finally, we meet here at Fondren Hall at 10 o'clock on the 2nd Sunday of every month, except when we don't. We have, in the program it's mentioned, but I'm a teacher, a tutor, and repetition is an essential element of pedagogy. So, on August, we will meet on the 9th, the 2nd Sunday. We will meet September 20th, which is the 3rd Sunday. We'll meet October 25th, which is the 4th Sunday. But we can't continue this progression because a month has only so many Sundays. In November, we will meet on the 22nd, again the 4th Sunday. And then when we're on the brink of falling off the month, December rescues us, and in December, we meet back on the 2nd Sunday, December 13th. I'd like to say that the reason for these changes is an act of God, but it isn't because we know that these are the Sundays that we could get. So, right now, or soon, put them on your calendar app. So, however, you do not have to rely on me for information. We have a Facebook page and a meetup page. We have another Facebook page, the secret page, which is for those to join who don't want all their friends to know that they are secular. And we have a website, which among other things includes video of many of these assemblies. And if they're not on the website, they are on YouTube under Sunday Assembly Nashville. Go look at them and see what you think. Okay, now you've heard way too much of me. Let's hear some poetry. The 2 readers will be my good friend and the co-founder of Sunday Assembly Nashville, David Lyle, and he'll be followed by another very good friend, my beautiful bride, Melissa Bond. Please welcome David to the stage.
The world is full of mostly invisible things, and there is no way but putting the mind's eye, or its nose, in a book to find them out. Things like the square root of Everest, or how many times Byron goes into Texas, or whether the law of the excluded middle applies west of the Rockies. For these and like reasons, you have to go to school and study books, listen to what you were told, and sometimes try to remember. Though I don't know what you will do with the mean annual rainfall on Plato's Republic, or the calorie content of the diet of worms. Such things are said to be good for you, and you will have to learn them in order to become one of the grown-ups who sees invisible things, neither steadily nor whole, but keeps gravely the grand confusion of the world under his hat, which is where it belongs, and teaches small children to do this in their turn.
Learning the Trees by Howard Nemerov. Before you can learn the trees, you have to learn the language of the trees. That's done indoors, out of a book, which, now you think of it, is one of the transformations of a tree. The words themselves are a delight to learn. You might be in a foreign land of terms like samara, capsule, droop, legume, and pome, where bark is papery, plated, warty, or smooth. But best of all are the words that shape the leaves: orbicular, cordate, cleft, and reniform, and their venation, palmate, and parallel, and tips, acute, truncate, auriculate. Sufficiently provided, you may now go forth to the forests and the shady streets to see how the chaos of experience answers to catalog and category. Confusedly, the leaves of a single tree may differ among themselves more than they do from other species, so you have to find, all blandly the book says, an average leaf. Example. The catalpa in the book sprays out its leaves in whorls of 3 from the stem. The one in front of you, but rarely does, or somehow, somewhat, or almost. Maybe it's not catalpa. Dreadful doubt. It may be weeks before you see an elm fan-like in form, a spruce the pyramids, a sweet gum spiring up in steeple shape. Still, pedidentum, as Lucretius says, little by little you do start to learn. And learn also, as well maybe, what language does and how it does it. Cutting across the world, not always at the joints, competing with experience while cooperating with experience, and keeping an obstinate intransigence uncanny of its own. Think finally about the secret will pretending obedience to nature, but invidiously distinguishing everywhere, dividing up the world to conquer it. And think also how funny knowledge is. You may succeed in learning the names of many trees and calling out their names as you go by, but their comprehensive silence stays the same.
All right. Our speaker today is Professor Christopher Quarto of the Professional Counseling Program at Middle Tennessee State University. He is the coordinator for the concentration in clinical mental health. He also has a private practice in which he provides counseling services to adults as well as psychological testing services, such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, learning disabilities, mood and anxiety disorders, to both children and adults. He will speak to us today about ADHD, addressing the question, is ADHD a real disorder? We are very lucky that he found time to talk to us. Please welcome Professor Quarto.
That's quite a welcome. You guys have a lot of fun here, don't you? I can tell. And this is the first time my wife and I have been here. We're both musicians, and so we really appreciated what you folks did for those first couple of songs, and it sounded wonderful. What I would like to do today, and I'm trying to find my little PowerPoint. What I'd like to do today is just to briefly cover what I'd like you to get out of this. Usually when I go to workshops or conferences, I go there, a whole day thing, and I hope that I at least get one thing out of it. And so hopefully you'll get at least one thing out of this talk today. But this is what I hope that you'll get out of this talk, is that I want you to understand a little bit about what attention deficit disorder is. Some of you may have some ideas, but I want to go over that in a little more detail. today. But to consider, what is it that mental health professionals look at in determining whether a person really does have attention deficit disorder? There's more to it than just kind of looking on the internet at criteria and thinking that, ooh, I have that, I must have ADHD. There's more to it than that. And then finally, really looking at what are some of the arguments for and some of the arguments against this disorder. So that's what I hope to cover in my presentation today. You'll see something up here that Barkley, if I can go back to my other slide. You know what? I'm just going to have you control the slides up there, Jeremy. Yeah, thank you. That there's a researcher and a famous psychologist by the name of Russell Barkley who's done tons of research in this area. And when he had written about this, about attention deficit disorder, he used this description, the holy trinity of ADHD symptoms, which he had referred to as hyperactivity, impulsivity, and inattention and distractibility. So if I can just have you guys think back, if you can think back to when you were in elementary school, can you remember that one kid who was in your class who could never stay in a seat? The kid who was always talking and probably getting into trouble. Maybe that was you. But that was the kid who could just not settle down. He had excessive energy. And that's what we're talking about here with the hyperactivity. So if you can just kind of think back to that kid from elementary school. You know, and it's not uncommon for kids with attention deficit disorder not to give second thought to their consequences of their actions. It's kind of hard to see this Dennis the Menace cartoon up here, but what it says, he's sitting in the corner in a timeout, and what it says is, by the time I think about what I'm going to do, I already did it. That's perfect for the concept of impulsivity, because most of the time these kids stick their feet in their mouth and they don't understand. For instance, in a classroom, a girl might be walking into the classroom with this really nice dress, has her hair done really, really nicely, and this kid looks at her and says, "Oh, I really love your hair today, Jessica, but that dress makes you look fat." Okay, so who's going to want to hang out with that kid when they make that kind of a comment? So they don't think about the consequences, and then they wonder, why doesn't anybody want to hang out with me at recess? Well, it's for these types of reasons, but the unfortunate thing is that they don't understand that this is how they come off to people. So there's that lack of awareness there. And then inattention would be the last one. And as the name implies, kids have excessive difficulty paying attention for very long. And it's not all the time, by the way. It's typically when they're doing something that's boring or monotonous. Other times, their attention span is fine. So when parents come in and say to me, you know what, my kid doesn't have any problems paying attention when he's playing video games, well, that's fun stuff. But how about in the classroom when they're asked to do things that aren't so fun? That's where the problems seem to come up. So if you can take out your handout, I gave out a handout just at the beginning. If you can just take a brief look at that. There are two broad columns there. On the left-hand side, you'll see the symptoms of attention deficit disorder in what we call the inattention category. So when mental health professionals go about diagnosing people with attention deficit disorder, they look at the information in both columns and they make a determination, does this client show these types of symptoms? So on the left-hand side of the symptoms of inattention, a person would have to show at least 6 of those. And the same thing goes in the right-hand column for hyperactivity and impulsivity. A person would have to show at least 6 of those to show at least the minimal criteria for attention deficit disorder. And I'll talk more about that in a little while, but those are some of the minimal things that we take a look at. Okay, go ahead and advance to the next slide, please. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is you. And when you're doing things, I want to know if you've ever had this experience. You're doing something, whether it's watching TV, you're reading a book, you're at work, and all of a sudden you start thinking about something random, something that you're going to be doing this weekend, and it's kind of fun to think about that stuff. But then all of a sudden you think, whoa, why am I thinking about this stuff? I'm supposed to be working, I'm supposed to be reading, I'm supposed to be doing all this other stuff, but all of a sudden you started going off on your little mind trip there, which everybody does, by the way. So I think that happens to everyone, and that's perfectly a normal thing. Or sometimes you might be sitting, doing something, working, reading, and you feel a little bit restless, like you want to get up, like you want to move around. I felt that way plenty of times when I was developing this presentation. I just got up, I couldn't handle it anymore, I just had enough, and I just had to go out and do something else, then come back to it. And I think all of us have that kind of experience. But it doesn't mean, because we have these random thoughts from time to time, because we feel a little restless from time to time, it doesn't mean that we have ADHD. If you think of the bell-shaped curve, have all of you seen this at some point in time? You've probably seen this thing called the bell-shaped curve. And if you remember that it has this big bulge in the middle and the little tails on either side of it. And if you consider a person's attention span or their activity level, most of us pay attention fairly well. We're moderately active. And so we're at the same level as most people are. And if we were to kind of put that in a picture format where we would fall, most of us would fall in that normal range, or what we call the mid part of that bell-shaped curve, where that bulge is. Sorry about that. But other people have a real tough time paying attention. They can't pay attention for very long. They can't settle down for very long. And so they would be way over on that left side of that bell-shaped curve. So that's just a visual representation of where people fall. Some people who I really admire have that laser focus. They can just stay focused for long periods of time, and I think to myself, how do they do that? They'd be at the extreme right-hand side, but most people will fall right in the middle there. So although all of us don't pay attention 100% of the time, it doesn't mean that we have ADHD. That's the thing that I'm trying to get at there. So one way that we know that ADHD is a real disorder is by contrasting people who have a unique set of symptoms, those ones that I was showing you in that handout there, from those who don't have those symptoms. And if you could go to the next slide, please. And the other thing that psychologists and other mental health professionals do is they take into consideration these things right here. What's the nature of the symptoms, especially the ones that I was just presenting to you? Do people have or show those symptoms? But also it has to do with, well, how often do they show these things? How severe are the symptoms? It's one thing for me just to kind of have a random thought while I'm reading a book, but then say, oh, okay, let's get back to the reading. But another case for a person to have those thoughts on a very frequent basis and for them to have a negative impact on learning, especially in school. You see this with students, even college students will have this problem as well. And how long has this problem been going on? Typically with ADHD, you see this problem starting off in childhood. About 50% of the cases, it'll continue into adulthood. For adults, they're not the wild child like they may have been as a child, but they'll still feel restless and inattentive and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so these are important things to keep in mind. Okay, if you go to the next slide, please. What I want to do next is to consider some of the arguments for and against ADHD. And the field of psychology is kind of tricky because you're dealing with human behavior. And of course, doing research with humans, there's always going to be variability and problems with measurement and all that kind of good stuff. And it's different from studying something like chemistry or physics, where you have a lot more consistency and you know, predictability and that kind of stuff. So I want to make that comment ahead of time. So you're always going to find research that points in one direction or research that points in another direction. So I just want to make that caveat. And with that in mind, let's look at some arguments that people have proposed that this is a real disorder, right? ADHD is a real disorder, and a lot of it has to do with our biology. And if you look at DNA, as a starting point. I'm by no means a neuroscientist, but I want to point out a couple of these things. A few years ago, there were some researchers in England who had completed this study looking at DNA differences between kids who have ADHD and those that don't. And what they found in this study is that kids with ADHD, they had specific segments of their DNA that were missing in comparison to the control group. And that causes their brains to develop differently, and in particular, to mature more slowly than other kids. So that's one of the things that we know, that there are differences that way just from a DNA perspective. But also, if you take into consideration heritability, and this is always an interesting one, that kids with ADHD are more likely to have a parent who had or has ADHD, and that's always an interesting question. When I have parents that come in to see me with their child, that's the question I always ask. Did you or your spouse or partner have this when you were a child? And in a lot of cases, that's true. And what the research shows is in about 50 to 60% of the cases, one of the parents have had these symptoms or currently have ADHD themselves. So that's the heritability finding. Twin studies have also shown that a child with an identical twin with ADHD has a 3 in 4 chance of having ADHD themselves. So once again, more of that kind of evidence. Now we get into this whole fancy smancy neuroimaging and MRIs and all that kind of stuff. And MRI evidence is there as well that's consistently associated ADHD with less thickness of gray matter in the frontal cortex. So what does that mean? Well, basically, in the frontal cortex, that's the area of the brain that's responsible for allowing us to do very complex things. Problem solving, paying attention, organizing things, all that kind of stuff. And so we know with kids who have ADHD that those areas of the brain are less thick, doesn't allow as much neural communication to occur, which means that they can't pay attention, organize, plan, all that kind of thing, as well as other kids. PET scans, that's the one I have right there, the image right there in the very front, where you see PET scan images of kids that don't have ADHD compared to those that do have ADHD. And the way that this works is, what I have over there is that the more red, orange, and yellow that you see, that corresponds to greater mental activity, which you see with the people that don't have the ADHD. So there's not as much mental communication or activity that's going on with the ADHD kids when they're asked to do some sort of a problem. And then finally, neurotransmitters. This is the fancy name for the brain chemicals. And in this case, there's a specific one called dopamine that with these kids, that they don't produce enough of this particular neurotransmitter. So what happens? Well, when you don't have enough of this, you can't pay attention as well, you're not as motivated to do things, homework, and you can't learn as well. So all those figure into the equation. So that's where things like Ritalin and Adderall, you've heard of those medications, come in to kind of boost the production of dopamine so people can pay attention better. Okay, you can go to the next slide. All right, so those are the arguments for, but there are always the naysayers. There are a lot of people who say, you know what, ADHD doesn't even exist. There are people who say that, and others say, well, it exists, but not as much as we think it does. So I want to go over some of the arguments against ADHD. And I think this first one is a real important one to keep in mind, that it could be that people or kids who are thought to have had ADHD really don't have it. They're just kids. All kids are active. All kids are going to run around and do things. All kids are going to stick their feet in their mouth at some point, right? Everybody does that to some point. So it could be that what's viewed as abnormality, ADHD in this case, really is just typical childhood stuff. This would be common to see in parents who don't have a basis for comparison. It might be their only kid, and they might have a friend that says, you know what, your kid really seems pretty active. Have you ever considered getting him evaluated for ADHD? Okay. Or the parent may have 2 children The first child may be really laid back and just not very active at all. And the second child, who may just be more active but not ADHD, may look like they're hyperactive in comparison to the kid who's really laid back. Okay, so who's your basis for comparison here? So those are the things you have to keep in mind. Is it just really typical kid behavior? That's really the first one you have to keep in mind. But it could be a physical problem too. So could it be that a person with an underactive thyroid, that's a very good example of a person who might have that mental fogginess or attention problems, that kind of stuff, or even an overactive thyroid. A person could be very restless and nervous, inattentive, that kind of stuff. So it could be that it's a physical problem that's given the appearance of something like ADHD. And the same could be said for psychological alternatives too. You know, there's a lot of what we call diagnostic overlap between things like attention deficit and depression and anxiety and even learning disabilities. In all four of those cases, people have attention problems and concentration problems. So it could be that you're dealing with something else as opposed to ADHD, which is a good idea to get a proper evaluation for these things. And then, of course, there's the environmental explanation. Isn't it possible that a kid is growing up in an environment where there's not a lot of structure at home? The kid is allowed to kind of roam around, make his own rules, kind of decide when he's going to go to bed, or whatever the case is. There's just not a lot of structure and routine at home. So when he goes to school, he does the same thing at school. The teacher is wondering, hey, what are you doing? Get back in your seat. Well, the kid's just doing what he's learned to do at home. It's not that he has ADHD, it's more of an environmental learned type of response. Okay, so those are some of the arguments against. Okay, if you go to the last one. So I think that just the takeaway to kind of finish this, the thing that I always recommend is to proceed with caution. If your first inkling is, oh, this kid has ADHD, put on the brakes. Let's take a look at this very carefully to see what it really is. What I teach my students at MTSU is if you get a referral from a doctor or somebody, or a parent comes in and says, you know, I know my kid has ADHD, would you just kind of evaluate him and slap the diagnosis on him? No. It could be ADHD, but what else could it be? That should always be the question. We know that it could be a physical issue, even a substance use disorder, an environmental condition that we were talking about before. You always have to take into consideration what else could it be, or else you're going to slap a diagnosis on a kid that might not be the right diagnosis, and then you start giving them medication or whatever, and that could spell some problems down the road. So those are just some things to keep in mind. Does anybody have any questions at all? I know I went through this kind of quickly, but do you have any questions at all about what we looked at here, arguments for, against, or ADHD in particular? Mm-hmm.
I was referred by my 6th grade teacher to see somebody because they believed, hands down, my mom told me this, that I had ADHD. I fit all the symptoms in her mind, and then they took me and they said, oh, no. He has Asperger's syndrome. He has something completely different. So do you instruct either your clinical psychologists or people that you talk with on ways to kind of take out the bias rather than just simply saying, oh, he must have this?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And that's what I was just referring to with what else could it be, right? So what you're kind of referring to is what we call differential diagnosis. So a person is coming and they have these symptoms or these behaviors, and one of the things that we teach, at least at MTSU, is to look at the criteria for certain types of diagnoses. So the clinician has to kind of know in their heads, okay, he's kind of showing these characteristics, so I kind of know to be looking at these diagnoses as possibilities. And then as I learn more about you in an interview or with testing, then I can kind of narrow it down even more until I come up with what I think is the correct diagnosis. That's how it should be done. But that's often misdiagnosed. So that's a good thing that you brought up there. Autism and ADHD that's often, they're misdiagnosed. What else? What other questions you have? Yeah?
Can you have ADHD without hyperactivity?
Yes, that's a good question. That's a good point right there. And that there are 3 different types of attention deficit disorder. And the one that I was really referring to today is what we call a combined type, where people have all 3 of those things: hyperactivity, impulsivity, and inattention distractibility. Now, there are some people who really don't have as much problem with the inattentiveness. They're just kind of off the wall all the time. They can't settle down. That's the hyperactivity, impulsivity type. Other people, they don't have that problem. They could just be sitting there like a slug in the classroom, but they're daydreaming, they're zoning out, they're just not tuned into anything. And we would call that the inattentive type. And you see that more in women than you do in boys, where the hyperactive type you see more in boys than you do in women. So, but yeah, there are those 3 different types. What else? Yeah?
Have you noticed a difference in the gender of the children that you're diagnosing? I mean, how many girls have you seen versus how many boys?
Yeah, and that's exactly, I get more of for the kids that I evaluate more adults nowadays, but for the kids that I evaluate, it's more likely that I'm going to see the boys, because it's the boys who are more likely to be the active ones and more disruptive in the classroom. And so the parent gets the phone call from the teacher, do something with this child, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's more likely that I see, in my practice anyway, that I see the boys.
Maybe one more.
Or
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about the efficacy of medication in younger children who are diagnosed with ADHD?
It's very effective, but you have to be careful. With any medication, you have to be careful. The first thing is that you don't have to use a medication all the time for attention deficit. If it's a very severe case, yeah, probably. But if it's a less severe case, you could use other strategies. But the stimulants are the ones that are very effective, obviously. So, Ritalin, Adderall, Concerta are the typical ones. The bad thing is that there's always side effects. So, appetite suppression, sleep, insomnia, mild insomnia, those can be typical ones. Stomach ache, headache, when you're first starting that, those will usually go away. But there's always going to be some sort of side effect. So although they're very effective, you have to kind of balance that with the side effects of those.
All right. Thank you.
Our new, radically age-inclusive choir sing Never Stop Learning, helped by Ray on the keyboards.
Some of you little ones over here, you want to sing with us today or do some motions with us today, even if you don't know the song? Okay. There will be a section toward the end where the lyrics come up on the projector, and at that point, you're welcome to be a kid or a kid who's also an adult and stand up and sing along with us up there. All right. Ready?
Never stop learning, never stop growing, never stop seeking the brightest star.
what you can do. Keep yourself growing your whole life through. Keep yourself growing your whole life through.
Augie has a meeting with her agent now. That was lovely. An essential part of every Sunday Assembly service is a segment called Trying My Best. Here, a member of our group tells a personal story, funny, poignant, serious, all of the above, that shows that person negotiating life, failing, succeeding, trying not to screw up too badly. We are very lucky on this day of learning that Carrie Supika and Alice, Carrie Supika, high school English teacher and new mother, and Alice, not yet an English teacher, and a new baby, have together a story for us. Please welcome Carrie and Alice.
So, as a teacher, I already know everything. I have to stand in a room full of teenagers and be in charge. I know it all. And naturally that crossed over into my personal life, and then I became pregnant. And I realized how much I don't know. And I've learned a lot in just 2 months of motherhood. Please. It's genetic. She was just a few minutes old there. All right, moms. Cluster feeding? Nobody told me about cluster feeding. Every 45 minutes. All night long. Yeah. Nobody told me about that. And babies don't care about the plans you have for the day or the goals that you set for yourself. And I can no longer do last-minute things. Friends without kids, I can no longer do last-minute things. Please. So my priority shift, the pets that we have 2 cats and a dog. They used to be furry children. And now we have a zoo in our house. They're wild animals. And I have to protect my baby every day. Not really, but it's... When we got home from the hospital, we looked at them differently. They were no longer cute with personalities. They were in the way. And hair all over. And driving? Don't people know that I have a baby? And I have more important things to live for now? In navigation, I can no longer zig and zag through a crowd like I used to. Kids come with a lot of crap. Please. I have learned the true strength and beauty and wonder of my marriage. Having a baby's made me a pansy too. Jamie has given me support and encouragement and plenty of online research to get me through the tough times. And even though he sleeps through a 2 a.m. feeding and then later tells me he needs a nap, I still love him, and I can't see myself doing this with anybody else. And I've learned about true acts of friendship. True friends show up with bags of food and load the dishwasher for me. And a true friend answers my frantic midnight text with research-based answers and encouragement, and tells me that engorgement, mastitis, and thrush won't last forever. And in order to have strong relationships, I don't need to say everything that comes to my mouth. I've learned how to shut up. And I've also learned that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, nor is it a sign of stupidity. Asking for help shows the desire to learn and grow. Asking for help, and generally asking questions, is a good thing and should be encouraged, even among us scholarly folk. Please. Ultimately, I've learned that I don't know anything. And there's not an exact answer to being a great mom, but I feel that I've identified a few of the necessary tools for survival. A support network that can come from the most unlikely of places. Embracing the unknown and asking questions. But what do I know? I'm just trying my best.
I was given word of, appropriately after Alice has just delivered her talk, I was given word of 3 birthdays that have happened or are about to happen. Where'd they go? Elizabeth Leeming has just turned 9 years old. Cynthia Raffaele will turn 16 years old later this month. I hope I didn't get that wrong.
She turned 16 on the 6th.
She turned 16 on the 6th. Then Elizabeth will turn 9 years old later in the month. I got it backwards. And on July 7th, Mary and Frances, daughters of David Lyle and Douglas Murray, turned 5 years old. 5? Yes. First Mary, then a few minutes later, Frances. Okay, now for upcoming events. We now reach the most exciting part of the Sunday Assembly service, the announcements. Where are we? This Wednesday, July 15th at 5:15 and at 6:15, we will have our monthly Learn More Smoop, which will be a tour of the Corsair Distillery, ending with a visit to the tap room. As of last night, there were room for 14 more. The cost is $2.
With $6 for an optional, tasting after if I remember correctly.
Okay, with $6 for an optional tasting. Next Sunday, July 19th at 8 a.m., we will have our first boating brunch, courtesy of Chris Meisner, who is up there running the video camera. As of last night, there were room for 3 more on the pontoon boat. This will be at the Elm Hill Marina off of Bell Road, or on Bell Road, actually, whatever. In case you haven't eaten enough on July 19th, Georgia Phelps will host her monthly Middle Ground potluck on that same day at 4 o'clock out at her house in Hermitage. All these are on the meetup page. Donaldson, I'm sorry. In that direction. And because we like to socialize in different parts of the mid-state, we also have a Smoop South on Thursday, July 23rd in Franklin. This too is a potluck. Yes?
Okay. That sounds good.
Okay. If you bring something, it becomes a potluck. And 2 weeks from right now in Centennial Park, we have our monthly brunch. So, You may be wondering how all these events come about, this service, these smoops, these brunches, the great music, the readers, the speakers, the greeters, the programs, and so on. Well, it's very simple. I was going to say that Ashley did it all. But actually, we have devised a plan. 4 months ago, Sunday Assembly Nashville approved this organizational plan to describe and delineate the duties that comprise everything that is Sunday Assembly Nashville. As you can see, it works. We have smoops, we have readers, we have a service going on, we have great music. But, as you might guess, it will work even better when more of us are involved. So, if you have been wondering how to get involved, well, for one moment, you can wonder no more, because I'm going to tell you. Let's see if I have this right. Starting on the far left, we have the Communications Committee. This group is involved in online communications, social media, the programs that you have with you. This group keeps all of us informed about what any of us is doing. This group is the one that will speak to the media and write press releases. If this interests you, then after our service, talk to Patrick. I saw him in the doorway. Did he leave?
He's in childcare today.
He's in childcare.
Talk to me, I will get the message.
Talk to Alex.
Working or attending?
That's none of your business.
We got to start somewhere.
They have great name tags. Great name tags.
And they have great name tags. The name tags, made by Melissa, more or less conform to the colors you see on the screen. Next, we have kids and teens programs, childcare program, where Patrick is working, our teen program, and of course, the people who ensure that no children are wandering down West End Avenue during the Centennial Brunch. If you have children, then kids and teens need you to pitch in. If you love working with children, then kids and teens need you to pitch in. Talk to Nancy Scutella right there.
We need you, please.
Or she's better known now, Augustina's mother.
Yeah.
We then have 2 committees and a subcommittee named for each part of our motto. The Help Often Committee does good works. If I were a believer, then I would say that it's the Help Often Committee that is scoring the points to help the rest of us get into heaven. It is this committee that collects the books, feeds the hungry, cleans up the rivers, and so forth. If you want to initiate good works, then talk to Ashley Stuckey. Stand up, Ashley. Thank you. In addition, if you don't want to initiate, but you want to be a reliable and regular pair of hands, then tell Ashley that, because cleaning up a river takes a lot of hands. You have already seen some of the Live Better committee's work. If someone greeted you at the door this morning, that was Live Better. These name tags, as I just mentioned, that is Live Better. Most of the events coming up for the rest of the month, the smoops, they fall under the purview of Live Better. Live Better is the social committee. If you want to join them in greeting, in organizing and running social gatherings, then talk to Melissa Bond. Finally, putting on these monthly assemblies takes a committee that has 2 subcommittees. The division is pretty simple. Wonder More takes care of the words, music takes care of the music, and assembly production takes care of everything else while overseeing both words and music. If you sing or play an instrument and would like to do so on this stage, then see Ben Stuckey, the man who holds the bottom end and all the tunes, the bass player, and the chair of the music committee. On the word side, if you think that you have a Trying My Best inside you, as Carrie just did, in fact now she's wearing it, then see Brenda Quinn. If you would like to help find guest speakers, then see David Lyle. If you are interested in hosting or reading to us some poetry, some prose, or in helping select the readings, then see me or see David. And if you're interested in helping out with the video recording and the other backstage aspects of the assembly, then see me. Okay, I'm sorry that took so long, but is it clear? After we're done, go to one of these people and join a committee. Just a couple more last things. Volunteers are great, but volunteers don't pay all the bills. We can't live on love alone. The song was a lie. Thanks to our treasurer, Tanya Trezise, here is what we took in. Next page. And here's what we spent. As you can see, Sunday Assembly ain't making anyone rich. It would be good for the organization not to have to live quite so close to the bone. So, we have a lovely box in the lobby. The box will take cash and checks. Please feed it. Tanya can swipe a credit card, true? True. You can let her swipe yours. She promises to hand it back to you. Also, via the website, which you saw earlier, you can access PayPal and donate there. I think this is mentioned in the program too. Or sign up for Amazon Smiles. Tell it that you love Sunday Assembly Nashville, and we get a tiny piece of all your rampant consumerism. Hooray for rampant consumerism. Okay, volunteering, money, on to lunch. After our assembly here, we lunch at Two Boots Pizza, which is on 1925 Broadway, which is just a short walk. MapQuest says 7 minutes, but you can do it in 5. From here, 19th Avenue to Grand, left on Grand, right on 20th, and you run right into Two Boots backside on Division Street. Two Boots fronts Broadway, but its rear is on Division Street. Immediately after today's service, however, we have a vote and an election. When that organizational plan that was up a moment ago was approved, it stipulated that we would very soon write and vote on bylaws and that the board would increase its membership from 5 to 7. After today's service, we'll read and vote on the bylaws and then meet the nominees and elect 2 of them. Everyone is welcome to stay for that. If you must leave right away, you can vote as you leave. Marina will be at the table right after our last song. Okay, I have one last announcement. For these past few days, I have been plaguing one person in this room. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, just one person? And you're also thinking, I have to say no, it wasn't actually Melissa. Over the last 4 days, I have sent Jeremy Wells, who does our slides, at least 9 email messages, most of them long, about different things I wanted to include on the slides. And they should go in this order. No, they should go in that order. At the same time, Jeremy was working with the music committee to find all the lyrics for all the songs. He has been very gracious in all his correspondence with me, and he has done everything beautiful. Please join me in thanking Jeremy for the great work. Georgia, would you hand me that book under the room? I came so prepared. Okay. Thank you. Back to the theme of learning. When I was given by the Wonder More subcommittee this hosting gig today, I thought I was going to tell a little anecdote in my closing thoughts here about me and the SAT, because the SAT is sort of connected to learning, although not as much as people think, and the SAT is another thing that I tutor. So I wrote a draft of the anecdote, and it wasn't very good. And when I was rewriting it, trying to make it a little less, what's the word I'm looking for? A little less crappy, and a little more funny, I spied on my bookshelves the Phantom Toll Booth. In the Phantom Toll Booth, Milo rescues Princess Rhyme and Princess Reason. Rhyme and reason. The Phantom Toll Booth is all about learning. So I'm going to save that anecdote for another time or for no other time. And right now, I'd like to end with a couple pages from the Phantom Toll Booth. Milo has just arrived at the castle/prison where Rhyme and Reason are trapped, and he flops down weary on a couch. And he says, "We would have been here much sooner if I hadn't made so many mistakes. I'm afraid it's all my fault." "You must never feel badly about making mistakes," said Reason quietly, "as long as you take the trouble to learn from them. For you often learn more by being wrong for the right reasons than you do by being right for the wrong reasons." "But there's so much to learn," he said. "Yes, that's true," admitted Rhyme. "But it's not just learning things that's important. It's learning what to do with what you learn, and learning why you learn things at all that matters." "That's just what I mean," explained Milo. "Many of the things I'm supposed to know seem so useless that I can't see the purpose in learning them at all." "You may not see it now," said the Princess of Pure Reason, "but whatever we learn has a purpose, and whatever we do affects everything and everyone else, if even in the tiniest way. Why, when a housefly flaps its wings, a breeze goes round the world. When a speck of dust falls to the ground, the entire planet weighs a little more. And when you stamp your foot, the earth moves slightly off course. Whenever you laugh, gladness spreads like the ripples in a pond, and whenever you're sad, no one nearby can be really happy. And it's much the same thing with knowledge. For whenever we learn something new, the whole world becomes that much richer. And remember also, added the princess of sweet rhyme, that many places you would like to see are just off the map, and many things you want to know are just out of sight or a little beyond your reach. But someday you'll reach them all. For what you learn today, for no reason at all, will help you discover all the wonderful secrets of tomorrow. I'm very glad we've all been here together this morning, and I'm very, very glad that we have this fine band now to sing us out. Please welcome back for 2 more songs, unnamed the Sunday Assembly Band.
All right, thank you. Sorry about that little delay there, trying to get everything back in place. Got a couple of tunes for you. Welcome to sing along, dance whatever you want to. Just before the second one, I'll get a chance to kind of introduce the Unnamed Assembly Band in a not so straightforward fashion, but you'll get to meet them, so.
I